The regional director smiled as he delivered the news over lunch at the downtown steakhouse. "We're bringing in some fresh blood, Alex. Time for new leadership in the IT department." After 12 years of building their entire digital infrastructure from scratch, I was being replaced by his 26-year-old son who just graduated from computer science. "These things happen," I replied, cutting into my steak. What he didn't know was that I'd already discovered their plan weeks ago, and I'd been preparing for this moment. My name is Alex Rivera, and this is how my termination became their corporate nightmare. I'm 39 years old, been the IT director at Coastline Logistics in San Diego since I was 27. Started there right after getting my master's in computer engineering, when they were still a mid-sized shipping company handling cargo for maybe 20 clients along the Pacific coast. Now they're a major logistics operation moving freight for Fortune 500 companies, managing supply chains across 3 countries, and processing millions in transactions daily. But here's what Robert Kellerman, the regional director who just fired me, never understood: every system that made Coastline profitable was built by me. Not purchased from vendors, not outsourced to consultants, but custom designed from the ground up to solve problems that off-the-shelf software couldn't handle. The warehouse management system that tracked inventory across 12 facilities, mine. The routing algorithms that optimized delivery schedules and saved millions in fuel costs, mine. The security protocols that protected client data and prevented the cyber attacks that crippled our competitors, all mine. For 12 years, I'd been the invisible foundation that everything else was built on, and now they were handing it all over to Tyler Kellerman, Robert's son, because he had a shiny new degree and talked about artificial intelligence and blockchain like they were magic solutions to problems he didn't even understand. The warning signs had been building for months. It started in January when Robert mentioned that Tyler would be joining the company after graduation. "Brilliant kid," he'd said during our quarterly review. "Top of his class at UC Berkeley, really understands modern technology." I'd nodded politely, but internally, I was skeptical. Academic brilliance and real-world application were 2 very different things. Still, I figured Tyler would start in an entry-level position, maybe junior developer, and work his way up like everyone else. Then February came, and Robert started asking pointed questions about my systems. How long would it take to document everything? How difficult would it be for someone else to maintain the code? Were there any dependencies that only I understood? "Just want to make sure we have proper knowledge transfer protocols," he'd explained. "Corporate governance and all that." I should have seen it coming. But after 12 years of loyalty, of late nights fixing critical systems, of building solutions that saved the company millions, I trusted that my value was obvious. I trusted that Robert understood what I brought to the table. I was wrong. The first concrete sign came in March, when I discovered Tyler had been given a tour of our data center. Not by me, but by Janet from HR, who knew absolutely nothing about our technical infrastructure. I only found out because our security cameras logged the access, and I routinely reviewed those logs for compliance purposes. Why wasn't I informed about the data center tour? I asked Robert the next day. "Oh, that," he waved dismissively. "Tyler was just curious about our operations. Getting familiar with the business before he starts." "Starts in what capacity?" "We haven't finalized his role yet. Probably something in strategic technology planning." Strategic technology planning. That was my job. The second sign came when I noticed someone had accessed my development server from an IP address I didn't recognize. The access logs showed extensive file copying meters, every piece of documentation I'd written, every system diagram, every code repository. When I traced the IP, it led back to Robert's home office. They weren't just planning to replace me, they were stealing everything I'd built first. I confronted Robert about the unauthorized access during our next meeting. "I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Maybe someone from corporate was conducting a routine audit. Corporate doesn't have access to our development environment," I replied. "And they certainly don't have access to my personal documentation. Alex, you're being paranoid. No one's trying to steal your work." But I knew better. And that night, I started making my own copies of everything, not the company systems, but my original code, my personal notes, the intellectual property I'd developed before joining Coastline and had simply integrated into their operations over the years. The third sign was when Tyler showed up for an informational interview with my team. Robert scheduled it without consulting me, introduced Tyler as someone who might be working with the IT department in the future. I watched Tyler ask questions about our systems, taking notes on everything from our network architecture to our backup procedures. He was smart, I'll give him that. But smart in the way that someone who's learned theory is smart, not in the way that someone who's solved real problems under pressure is smart. Interesting setup, Tyler said after the tour. Very traditional. I can see where there might be opportunities for modernization. Traditional. My systems that had run flawlessly for years, that had scaled with the company's growth, that had never experienced a major security breach or significant downtime, were traditional. What kind of modernization are you thinking about? I asked. Well, cloud migration, obviously. Microservices architecture. Maybe some machine learning integration for predictive analytics, the usual digital transformation stuff. The usual digital transformation stuff. Like it was a simple matter of installing new software instead of a complex process that required understanding how every component of our operation worked together. That's when I knew for certain what was coming. Tyler wasn't being brought in to work with me. He was being brought in to replace me. I spent the next month quietly preparing. I documented everything that was legitimately mine. Code I'd written before joining Coastline, algorithms I'd developed on my own time, solutions I'd created that weren't specifically requested by the company. I also started reaching out to my network, letting former colleagues know I might be looking for new opportunities soon. More importantly, I began implementing what I called knowledge insurance. Subtle modifications to critical systems that would require my specific expertise to maintain. Nothing malicious, nothing that would harm the company's operations, just dependencies that only I understood. The firing itself happened exactly as I'd predicted. Lunch at Romano's Steakhouse, Robert's favorite place for important conversations. He was nervous, kept adjusting his tie and avoiding eye contact. "Alex, you've done tremendous work here," he began, after we'd ordered. "Really built something special, but the company's evolving, and we need to evolve with it." I nodded, took a sip of water, waited for him to continue. "We're bringing Tyler on as the new IT director. Fresh perspective, new ideas, modern approach to technology." "I see. And what's my role in this transition?" "Well, that's the thing. We won't be needing you to stay on. Tyler's confident he can handle things, and frankly, the board thinks it's time for some cost optimization in the technology department." Cost optimization. After 12 years of saving them millions with efficient systems, they were firing me to save money. "What's the timeline?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. 2 weeks, enough time to transfer knowledge and ensure a smooth handover. 2 weeks to transfer 12 years of specialized knowledge. It was almost insulting. And Tyler's prepared to take over the warehouse management system, the routing algorithms, the security protocols. He's very confident about modernizing our entire technology stack. Says most of what you built can be replaced with industry-standard solutions. Industry-standard solutions. Tyler had no idea what he was talking about. I signed the termination paperwork that afternoon, shook Robert's hand professionally, and walked back to my office to begin the knowledge transfer process. Tyler was already there, sitting at my conference table with a laptop and a notebook, ready to download 12 years of expertise in 2 weeks. "Alex, thanks for doing this," Tyler said with the confident smile of someone who'd never failed at anything important. "I know transitions can be awkward, but I'm really excited to modernize this place. Where would you like to start?" I asked. "Let's begin with the warehouse management system. I've been looking at some SaaS solutions that could replace your custom code. Much more scalable and maintainable." I spent the next 2 hours explaining why our custom warehouse management system existed, the specific requirements of our clients, the integration with legacy shipping systems, the real-time coordination with truck routing that no off-the-shelf solution could handle. Tyler took notes, nodded in the right places, but I could see in his eyes that he thought I was overcomplicating things. "Seems like a lot of unnecessary complexity," he said finally. "I'm pretty sure we can simplify this significantly." "You could try," I agreed. "But you might find that the complexity exists for good reasons." The next day, Tyler brought in a consultant from Cloud Tech Solutions, a company that specialized in digital transformation for logistics companies. I watched them walk through our data center, pointing at servers and talking about cloud migration timelines, as if moving 12 years of custom systems was as simple as copying files to a new folder. "How long do you think it would take to migrate everything to AWS?" Tyler asked me during one of our transition meetings. "Depends on how much you want to rebuild," I replied. "The current systems are tightly integrated. You'd essentially be starting over." "That might not be a bad thing. Fresh start, modern architecture, cloud-native design." I nodded. "That's certainly one approach." What I didn't tell Tyler was that a fresh start would take at least 2 years and cost millions in development time, not to mention the revenue lost during the transition period. But he was confident that his textbook knowledge and the cloud tech consultants could handle anything. On my last day, Tyler organized a small farewell gathering in the break room. Cake, coffee, a few awkward speeches about my contributions to the company. Robert made a point of thanking me for my foundational work and expressing confidence that Tyler would take things to the next level. I shook hands with my former team members, collected my personal items, and walked out of Coastline Logistics for what I thought might be the last time. 3 weeks later, Tyler called me. "Alex, hey, it's Tyler. Quick question about the warehouse system. We're getting some error messages I don't recognize, and the cloud tech guys aren't sure what's causing them." "What kind of error messages?" "Something about authorization tokens expiring. The system keeps locking out certain user accounts." I smiled to myself. The authorization system I'd built included automatic security features that required manual renewal every 30 days. It wasn't in any documentation because it was designed to be handled by someone who understood the security architecture. "That's part of the security protocol," I explained. "There should be an admin function to refresh the tokens." "Yeah, we can't find it." "Do you remember where it is?" "It's in the security management module. Should be under system maintenance." "We don't see a system maintenance option." Of course they didn't. Access to that module required administrator privileges that I'd never given to anyone else because no one else had needed it while I was there. "You'll need to check the user permissions," I said. "Make sure Tyler has full admin access." "That's the thing. I do have admin access, but that module isn't showing up." I paused, pretending to think. That's odd. It might be a configuration issue. I could take a look if you need me to." "Would you?" "I mean, we could bring you in as a consultant for a few hours, just to get this sorted out. My consulting rate is $200 per hour, 4-hour minimum." Silence on the line. That's pretty steep, Alex. That's the market rate for specialized emergency consulting." Tyler agreed to my terms, and I came back that afternoon to fix the authorization issue. It took me exactly 10 minutes. I knew where the problem was because I'd designed the system, but I took the full 4 hours, explaining to Tyler and his cloud tech consultants exactly how the security architecture worked and why it was designed the way it was. "This is incredibly complex," the cloud tech consultant said after my explanation. "Much more sophisticated than most companies need." "Coastline handles sensitive cargo data for major corporations," I explained. "The complexity is intentional. Each layer serves a specific security purpose." Tyler looked uncomfortable. "Couldn't we simplify it? Use a standard authentication system?" "You could," I agreed. "But you'd lose the multi-layered security that's kept you from being hacked for the past 12 years. It's your call." That was the first of many calls. The next week, Tyler contacted me about the routing system. The algorithms that optimized delivery schedules had started producing inefficient routes, costing the company thousands in unnecessary fuel expenses. Something's wrong with the optimization logic, Tyler explained. It's like the system forgot how to calculate efficient routes. What had actually happened was that the machine learning component of the routing system required periodic retraining with updated traffic data and delivery performance metrics. I'd always handled this monthly maintenance myself, but I'd never documented the process because it was part of my regular responsibilities. That's the learning algorithm recalibration, I explained. It needs fresh training data every month. How do we do that? There's a data processing script that pulls performance metrics and feeds them back into the optimization model. Should be in the scheduled tasks folder. We can't find any scheduled tasks folder. Of course they couldn't. The retraining process wasn't automated because it required human judgment to interpret the performance data and adjust the weighting factors based on seasonal variations and business priorities. Another consulting session, another $800. Another explanation of systems that Tyler was increasingly realizing he didn't understand. By the second month, the calls were coming weekly. The inventory tracking system was generating false alerts. The customer portal was experiencing random timeouts. The backup procedures were failing because no one knew the encryption keys for the off-site storage. Each problem was solvable, but only by someone who understood how all the pieces fit together. Tyler and his consultants were trying to fix individual issues without grasping the underlying architecture that made everything work. The breaking point came during month 3, when Coastline's biggest client, Pacific Shipping Corporation, threatened to terminate their contract due to repeated delivery delays and inventory discrepancies. Robert called me personally. "Alex, we need to talk. Can you come in tomorrow morning?" I found Robert in his office, looking like he'd aged 5 years and 3 months. Tyler was there too, along with the VP of operations and someone from corporate I didn't recognize. "Alex, thank you for coming," Robert began. "We're experiencing some challenges with our technology systems, and we need your expertise to resolve them." Tyler spoke up, his earlier confidence completely gone. "Everything's falling apart. The routing system is costing us a fortune. The warehouse management is generating errors daily. We've had 3 security incidents that our new systems couldn't prevent. And Pacific Shipping is threatening to leave," the VP of operations added. "They're saying our service quality has declined dramatically." I nodded sympathetically. "That sounds frustrating. What do the cloud tech consultants recommend?" Robert shifted uncomfortably. "They've recommended rebuilding everything from scratch, complete system replacement. But they're talking about 18 months and $2.3 million in development costs. Plus," Tyler added quietly, "they want you to lead the development team. They say the existing systems are too complex for anyone else to reverse engineer efficiently." I leaned back in my chair. "So let me understand this. You fired me to save money and modernize your systems. Now you want to spend $2.3 million to rebuild systems that were working perfectly, and you want me to do it." The room was silent. "What would it take for you to come back?" Robert asked finally. I'd been expecting this question for weeks. "I'm not interested in coming back as an employee, but I'd consider a consulting arrangement." "What kind of arrangement?" 6-month contract. $300 per hour, 40 hours per week, minimum. I maintain and optimize existing systems while training your team properly. At the end of 6 months, you'll have stable operations and staff who actually understand how everything works. Robert did the math in his head. That's $288,000 for 6 months, plus expenses, and I retain ownership of any improvements I make to systems I originally developed. That's more than we were paying you annually as an employee. Yes, but it's less than rebuilding everything from scratch, and significantly less than losing Pacific Shipping and your other major clients. Tyler looked sick. "What about the modernization? The cloud migration? We can discuss that after your systems are stable and your staff is properly trained. Modernization is meaningless if you don't understand what you're modernizing." Robert exchanged glances with the corporate representative, who nodded slightly. "Deal," Robert said. I started the next Monday not as the IT director but as a senior consulting engineer. The first thing I did was audit every change Tyler and Cloud Tech had made to my systems. It was worse than I'd expected. They'd attempted to modernize the warehouse management system by replacing my custom inventory tracking with a commercial package that couldn't handle Coastline-specific workflow requirements. The routing algorithms had been simplified by removing the traffic pattern analysis that accounted for port congestion and border delays. The security protocols had been streamlined by eliminating redundant authentication steps that were actually critical for client data protection. It was like watching someone take apart a Swiss watch with a sledgehammer and then wonder why it stopped keeping time. Over the next month, I systematically restored the damaged systems piece by piece. Each fix revealed more problems created by the attempted modernization. Tyler watched this process with growing understanding of just how complex and interconnected everything really was. I had no idea, he admitted during one of our progress meetings. In school, they make it sound like you can just swap out components and everything will work. Real-world systems aren't built from textbook examples, I explained. They evolve over time to solve specific problems in specific environments. Every piece serves a purpose, even if that purpose isn't immediately obvious. By month 4, Coastline's operations were running smoother than they had before I left. Pacific Shipping renewed their contract. The routing system was saving more money than ever. The security incidents stopped entirely. But the most satisfying moment came when the Cloud Tech consultant approached me after a team meeting. "I have to ask," he said, "how long did it take you to build all of this originally?" "About 8 years," I replied. And that was starting with simpler requirements and growing the complexity gradually as the business needed it. We quoted 18 months to rebuild it from scratch. I nodded. "You would have needed at least 3 years, assuming you could figure out all the business requirements correctly. Most consulting firms underestimate the complexity because they don't understand the industry-specific challenges." He looked thoughtful. "Would you be interested in consulting for our other clients? We've got 3 other logistics companies trying to modernize their operations." That's how Rivera Systems Consulting was born. Not by choice, but by necessity. The industry was full of companies that had built successful operations on complex custom systems, then hired consultants who promised to modernize everything without understanding what they were modernizing. Within 6 months, I had contracts with 5 logistics companies, 2 manufacturing firms, and a regional airline. All of them had made the same mistake. They'd trusted consultants who treated their unique systems like generic software that could be easily replaced. Tyler, to his credit, learned from the experience. He stayed at Coastline and spent 2 years learning how the systems actually worked before attempting any changes. He's now a competent systems administrator, though he'll never have the deep understanding that comes from building something from the ground up. Robert offered me my old job back several times, each time with a higher salary and more autonomy. But I'd learned something valuable about my own worth. As a consultant, I wasn't just an employee who could be fired when times got tough. I was a specialist whose expertise commanded premium rates precisely because it was rare and valuable. A year after my termination, I ran into Robert at an industry conference in Los Angeles. He looked healthier, less stressed than he had during those difficult months after my departure. "No hard feelings about everything that happened?" he asked. "None at all," I replied honestly. "It taught me what I was really worth." "Any regrets about not coming back to Coastline?" I thought about it. Only that it took getting fired for me to realize I'd been undervaluing myself for 12 years. Robert nodded. "For what it's worth, letting you go was the biggest mistake I've made in 20 years of management." "It wasn't a mistake," I said. "It was a learning experience. For both of us." Today, Rivera Systems Consulting employs 15 people and generates more revenue than I made in my entire 12-year career at Coastline. We specialize in what I call legacy system optimization, helping companies understand and improve the complex systems they depend on instead of replacing them with generic solutions that don't fit their specific needs. Tyler still calls me occasionally when he encounters something in the Coastline systems he doesn't understand. I'm always happy to help this. At my consulting rate, of course. But more often than not, he figures things out himself. He's learned to respect the complexity instead of fighting it. The best part isn't the money, though the financial success is satisfying. It's the knowledge that I'm no longer dependent on someone else's perception of my value. I know what I'm worth, and more importantly, I know how to prove it to anyone who questions it. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to your career is getting fired by someone who doesn't understand what you do. It forces you to articulate your value in ways you never had to before. And once you understand your true worth, no one can ever undervalue you again. As I tell my consulting clients, the goal isn't to make yourself indispensable to one company. It's to make your skills so valuable that every company wants access to them. That's the difference between being an employee and being a specialist. And specialists, unlike employees, are never redundant.